Welcome to SchezzWho, Hampton Roads' top spot for politics. And tonight, I do aim to really make that label true, as the topic will be about why vote Donald Trump. And my guest will be serious folks I know in the Republican community, and they'll open up their minds and tell us why to vote Trump. Now, before I kick off, I want to mention that which gets this show off the ground, beginning with, of course, the founder of the show, my wife, Andrea Dixon, who is now running large and in charge in the workforce development with the Department of Energy in Richmond. So I'm glad for her success, very proud of her, love her, and of course, thank you for founding the channel. I also want to shout out Ellen's Homestyle and Barbecue Express. There's a location right here in my hometown of Portsmouth, in my former hometown in Virginia Beach, across from Regent University. Great food over there. So look up Miss Ellen's Homestyle and Barbecue for your next meal. I also want to shout out Mr. Seiko Varner over at Positive Vibes Incorporated, where they do entertainment and consulting services. Look up their email, positivevibesfinancial@gmail.com, 757-932-0177 to reach him direct. And of course, he also founded the Hampton Roads Green Book, a great service to be able to find Black and Brown-owned businesses in the 757. So look up Mr. Seiko Varner. Also have new supports to shout out, beginning with Mr. Farley Perkins, insurance broker, agency owner, Brightway Insurance, the Farley Perkins Agency. He'll help you out with your insurance needs here in the 757. We have his email at farleyrperkins@brightway.com. A number at 757-271-6655, and of course, Brightway, farleyperkins.com. And a new one, another business here in Portsmouth, ELG Suite Boutique, which is 340 High Street in Portsmouth, right here in this great part of the 757. And I'm glad that they're able to jump on as well. Now, my aim with this series is to let viewers know why that they should vote a certain way. Now, I brought on earlier Libertarian presidential candidate Chase Oliver and Virginia Green Party Representative Tom Yeager to tell us why to vote third party and independents in 2024. I will also do a show Wednesday night with 3 serious Democrat surrogates about why we should vote for Kamala Harris. But tonight is about why vote Donald Trump. So I reached out to good friends of mine, both personally and throughout Facebook, Mr. Jimmy Frost, Mrs. Lucia Owen, and Miss Melanie Collette, to join the program. I do hear at the moment that Mr. Jimmy Frost is a little tied up with the Republican City Committee, but if he has a second to tap in, of course, I'm going to bring him on. Now, Melanie Collette is a business technology expert, entrepreneur, and political commentator with extensive corporate operations and organizational management experience. She's a passionate conservative and active leader in the New Jersey State Republican Party, recently serving as vice chair of Cape May County and former vice chair of the New Jersey Federation of Republican Women. Melanie is an active member of Project 21 at the National Center for Public Policy Research. And when she's not on TV like Newsmax and others, you can catch Melanie on Money Talk with Melanie, a podcast about global and domestic economy. Lucia Owen is also a passionate conservative and a small business owner in the 757. She has her own digital marketing agency, which is the Owen Marketing Group, focusing on not only digital marketing, but also lead generation services for businesses across the country. And she currently operates in 21 markets across the country. Of course, much like Lucia, I know Jimmy Frost for several years now. He happens to be a staple in the Virginia Beach Republican community. After all, he's there right now at their city meeting. He ran for chair not that long ago. He is instrumental in helping local candidates out when they run for office. I've seen him at many council meetings with a very Ben Franklin-like atmosphere about him, and he brings the wit of staunch opinions to council, city meetings, and hopefully a show like this when he has a second to tap in. That's why I selected them all tonight to tell you, SchezzWho viewers, why to vote Trump. And remember, SchezzWho viewers, this channel aims to grow, and we'll need all your likes to this video, all your comments on this video, and subscribe to this channel, please, so I can keep this up and bring you entertaining politics in Virginia. I hope to have a jovial conversation. I will name a slew of topics one at a time, and my guest will conversationally go over why voting Trump on that matter is important. At the end, I will thank my guests for coming on, but that's when I'll have my piece and I'll say my opinion on Donald Trump. That way, I remove my bias from them directly and try not to be combative. I aim to always have fun shows, not heated shows. So I'm going to go ahead and have them come on right about now. How are you guys this evening?
Doing good.
I'm doing good.
I'm glad to see you both coming on here. I hope you guys bring your well-reasoned opinions as to why voting Donald Trump is going to be important. So I want to lead off with the very first topic. I went to a couple of Gallup polls and stuff to just break down topics that are important to the 2024 election. And we're going to start at the top that they had. And I believe they said that that is the economy. So you guys tell me, why vote Donald Trump for the economy? And you can go whatever order you want to go.
I'll let Melanie go first.
Okay, sure. I think that the economy, just in general, did much better under Trump than it has done under the Biden-Harris administration. If you just look at cumulative inflation just by itself, you can directly connect, which is a little over 20%. And cumulative inflation, to be clear, is different than the rate of inflation. The rate of inflation, which is what the Harris campaign has been touting, like the inflation's getting lower, and people, the public at large, is confused. Well, why aren't prices going down? Well, that is because cumulative inflation is a little bit over 20%, and what that is the how high prices have gone since the beginning of the Biden-Harris administration to this point in time. Over that period of time, prices have gone up. And even though the rate at which the prices are going up has gone down, prices are still very high, and wage growth has not followed that. And that's why people are feeling broke, even though we're being told that the inflation rate is going down. So people, I think, some of the electorate is confused because this is not explained to them. Credit is being used at record numbers, which is also very bad for the economy. It's gonna lead to a bust, in my opinion. And many of the policies that Harris stands for, that Biden stood for, are inflationary, and we already have a problem with inflation. So just those issues alone, as far as the economy is concerned, are, I shouldn't say alone, there are other reasons, but just those basic reasons is why I think that Trump would be better for the economy than what we have going on now with Biden-Harris.
Now, Ms. Lucia, you're also a business owner. Tell me if you agree with large parts of that. Do you have other thoughts?
No, I agree wholeheartedly. Inflation, unfortunately, the way that they've skewed it, for the longest time, they were telling us it was not true inflation. It was this made up topic that they were coming up with. Unfortunately,
Transitory.
it was transitory. Thank you. I was trying to remember the name, couldn't think of it. The transitory inflation, essentially, you've got the head of the Treasury who is just continuously not really knowing exactly how to handle things. Unfortunately, since COVID, COVID kind of threw us in through an entire loop. It exacerbated prices. We had everybody, the unemployment skyrocketed. We're now realizing that they keep saying, oh, we're creating jobs, we're creating jobs. People aren't realizing that the jobs that they're creating, or they're stating that they were creating at the time, which only to retract that they actually were in the negative, was actually part-time jobs. They're not actually full-time positions. So essentially, they're replacing full-time positions with part-time positions. They are only coming back with all these waitressing and these hospitality positions that they've recreated because of COVID, eliminating them because of the lockdowns. Unfortunately, the problem we have is Harris said, and she said it continuously, that she would not do anything different than the past 3.5, almost 4 years under Joe Biden. And we all know that people are struggling. Unfortunately, the middle class. I can tell you for a fact, I work in lead generation services every day. I work with my clients at our home services companies, and we see a continued correlation between the constant uptick of people going into debt, trying to be able to live paycheck to paycheck or even being able to scrape by on a monthly basis and still trying to make ends meet with everything that is coming at them. If they need to, let's say if they're a homeowner and they need to get their windows fixed or they need to get their roof fixed, they need to get something that is a requirement for them to physically live, they're having a really hard time being able to do so because that the economy has just hit everybody so hard. People are being laid off left and right, especially in the technology industry. You've got people that, I mean, if you go on LinkedIn, you'll see people are trying to find jobs for 6, 9, 12 months. That's not indicative of a strong economy. When you have, now gas prices are now starting to settle, we'll imagine that it's the election. So unfortunately, that is also skewed. You just look at, for example, they had this kid who was on TikTok who decided to bring up his Walmart app a couple years ago. He popped it up just to look at that his grocery bill went up way above, I think it was like 125%. So when you talk about the economy and Harris saying that she wouldn't do anything different in the past 4 years, to me, as a mother, as of two children, my husband works for the Department of Defense. I, as a small business owner, scares me entirely. So I don't think we can deal with another year of this. I surely know we can't do another 4.
Let's move to the topic of democracy in the United States. Where would you guys like to suggest that Trump would be a good selection in terms of that topic?
Oh, I'll go first if you don't mind. Democracy it's the basis of it. I will tell you one thing that is you can't get more democratic and more patriotic, unfortunately, than Trump. Because I'll tell you this, if you go into the Trump winery, the minute that you see the fence line, you see a flag every 3 feet and it's waving in the air. And you can't get more democratic or patriotic than that. Trump wants to allow people to have the freedom for Second Amendment. He wants to allow people to have the freedom for the First Amendment. He doesn't want to dictate and stop people. Harris turned around and stated that we need to limit people on X and what they say. Do you understand that's the limitation of the First Amendment? You cannot do that. You cannot start limiting people on the First Amendment, then the Second Amendment, because then you're essentially going and you're saying, oh, well, he's a complete threat to our democracy when you're actually speaking through your teeth, because that is indicative of a threat to democracy when you do not allow people to voice their concerns in a manner that is obviously not threatening, because you can't yell fire in a crowded room, but you can say, I don't like Biden, I don't like Harris because of XYZ. Because I'll tell you what's not democratic is when you have a presidential candidate that had his life already pretty much he's tried to have assassination already twice. That's not democratic. And you know what is the consistency going on? It's because they are making it and fear mongering and making him see like he's such a threat, and he's not. They are.
How do you feel about that, Ms. Melanie?
You know what? It's just so funny when I think about democracy and I think about the fact that we have Kamala Harris as the Democrat candidate. It's just absolutely stunning to me that anyone would look at Trump and say, oh my gosh, Trump is going to be the end of our democratic republic, when Kamala Harris got not one single vote, when that party forced Joe Biden, their chosen candidate, out of the race. That is antithetical to what our democracy does. And then we're wondering why, like in a lot of ways, she's doing so poorly. And you ask many of her supporters, like, oh, why are you supporting Kamala Harris? And it's like, oh, because she's not Trump. But if you look at it, that would make sense when you look at how she got to be in that spot. They very undemocratically forced Joe Biden out. He had 14 million votes. And they said, forget your 14 million votes and 14 million people that supported Biden. And at a time when, remember, he was not supposed to run. Okay, he was not supposed to run. And they were thinking about getting rid of Kamala as VP because her polling was so abysmal. So, and I hate to do this what about the other guy thing when it comes to talking about democracy. It's just that I don't see any way in which Donald Trump has jeopardized democracy. He has gone in fair and square and stands up. I think what people get confused about Donald Trump, I think a lot of people on the left seem to feel that just because we feel as though your rights end where ours begins, that's a threat to democracy, but it's not. That is democracy. It means everyone gets to have their rights, and you don't get to tell us what rights apply and who we have to talk a certain way about, who we have to support, policies that we absolutely have to support by law. We have to do that. That's a threat to democracy. The way the border is being handled is a threat to democracy. Nobody wants to talk about that because as soon as you talk about it, you call it racism. But I think the fact that Donald Trump is trying to protect our election integrity, that he's trying to protect our border, that he's trying to make sure that the United States as a culture is protected and remains strong throughout the country, remains, one of the strongest nations that protects all other nations, by the way, because we are the strongest and we want to keep it that way. That's protecting democracy. That's the basis and the foundation on which our country was founded. And if we don't do that, we're going to lose things like, in my opinion, most important, freedom of religion. There are countries in this world who do not believe that it's okay for Christians to have a Bible. That are dead set on destroying America. Donald Trump is dead set on protecting those things and protecting those rights. It's extremely important. And so, when you first asked the question, I was like, is this even a question? Because he's not a threat to democracy at all. And the things that the left are referring to as threats to democracy is buffoonery. It's not at all.
How about terrorism and national security? Why should we vote Trump on that?
Did you want to?
I'll throw that in real quick. Terrorism and a threat to that. Let's just say when you have a candidate who is currently in the current administration, who has somebody who literally voices her concern about, for example, Tulsi Gabbard, voiced her concern about Kamala Harris, and then turns around and gets put on the DOJ watch list. Explain to me how that is not retaliation. That is the most un-American thing you could possibly do in society today. I will tell you, did we have a war in the 4 years from 2016 to 2020? No, we didn't, because Donald Trump, he worked out. He was the first president in many decades to go step foot in North Korea and actually speak with Xi Jinping. He talked with Putin. People say, oh, well, he's buddies with Putin. Well, Putin just currently endorsed Kamala Harris. Wouldn't that be reason enough not to vote for her? Because you have the guy who is really wanting to take over the world, who's saying, I want her for president. And the reason he's doing that is because he knows she's weak and she's incapable of actually doing anything because of her current administration that she's a part of, because they haven't done anything. All they've done is pretty much writing blank checks to Ukraine that our grandkids are going to have to pay for.
How about a nice follow-up, Ms. Bellamy?
No, I just saw that somebody in the comments said nobody is banning Bibles, and I didn't say that anybody is banning Bibles yet. What I said is that there are foreign entities who would love to see that happen. That's what I said, and it already happens in their countries. And so what I'm suggesting to you is that we need a strong leader to protect from those foreign entities that would like to make inroads into our country, to make our country the same way as their country is. That's what I'm saying. I didn't say anybody's banning Bibles here in the United States, but there are certainly countries around the world where Bibles are banned. You can't even have a Bible app on your phone in some countries. So that I find that highly problematic. Those countries also happen to hate the United States, and religious freedom is at the top of the first thing that they want to go, because once you can stop people from worshiping God, you can do anything. That's why I believe in China, he just took down all of the pictures of Jesus and replaced them with pictures of himself. So that's what China has in store for the United States, if you don't believe that they are a danger to democracy. So we have a candidate that is dead set on making sure that our democracy is protected, and that's Donald Trump.
How about the United States Supreme Court and the vision of the next 4 years by selecting Trump? Why select Trump for the United States Supreme Court?
You go, Melanie.
I don't know that the United States Supreme Court is I mean, it was a strong reason when he ran before because of the number of
Yep.
seats that were up. I think I like to see Supreme Court justices that actually believe in the Constitution and with the spirit of the Constitution is not people who think that it's something that is fudgeable. The Constitution has a mechanism and method for changing it. You can do a constitutional amendment. But what you can't do is do all these executive orders and all of these things that to try to circumvent what the Supreme Court does. The Supreme Court interprets the law. And I want to add to that there are many cases that the conservative side lost, if you will, with the Supreme Court that we have now. But just because you're taking an L on things that you don't think we should take an L on, if we had the amount of support to change those laws, then you could change it through Congress, through a constitutional amendment. You could do it the hard way, not the fast way by trying to pack the court. So if anything, I guess if you want to say that you should vote for Donald Trump to protect the Supreme Court, I would say to protect the Supreme Court as it is now with the 9 justices, no matter what the political leanings look like. But I would also argue that the Supreme Court has done a pretty good job and made conservatives and liberals pretty unhappy with some of its rulings over the last couple of years. I don't think that it's a slanted court at all. I think that the court sticks by the Constitution, and it should stay that way.
Do you believe the same, Ms. Lucio?
I do. I feel that the makeup is actually pretty it's very, very median. I would say it's very middle ground, which is exactly what we need. The left is they're frustrated because of the fact that it was so left leaning for so long, and that, when RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away, and it left the opportunity for more of a moderate individual to take that spot. That was where they were up in arms over it. So I think honestly, and our argument that, Trump shouldn't have been because it was an election year. Well, the difference was Obama was a lame duck. Trump was running for election. So that's the argument there. So that squashes it. But my thing is that there are 3 chambers to the government. You have the electoral, you have the executive, you have the legislative, and you have the congressional, essentially, the judicial, and then the SCOTUS. So if you eliminate the SCOTUS, you don't have checks and balances. That was imposed by the Constitution of the United States. So you completely remove the framework of our entire country by eliminating or trying to remove. AOC wants to do term limits. Well, it's interesting because if you want to impose term limits on SCOTUS, then you need to impose term limits on you congressmen too. So quite frankly, when it comes to the Supreme Court, they should have the capability of being in there as long as they feel, because they shouldn't feel like there should be repercussions for the way that they choose or the way that they interpret the law. That's the whole basis of the Supreme Court of the United States. It always has been and it always will be. It's the rule of the entire government, helps to determine who's on the Supreme Court, and then the Supreme Court determines how the law is read.
All right. How about the topic of immigration? Why vote Trump on immigration?
I think it's pretty clear, despite what Kamala Harris says in her commercials, that Trump has been the absolute strongest on the border. We have quadruple the number of illegal migrants that have come into this country over the Biden-Harris administration, and many of them not vetted. What people need to understand is that when people like Mayorkas, the DHS cabinet secretary, says that everybody has been fully vetted, the part that he leaves out is like as much as we can under the circumstances. For example, that many of these countries that these illegal immigrants come from, we do not have agreements with, we do not have access to their criminal records. We do not really have a true way to fully vet them. So that's highly problematic. Donald Trump, President Trump, started building the wall as much as he could. The illegal immigration was down significantly in comparison to the Biden-Harris administration. And I will tell you, the part that is really kind of most telling about the fact that Donald Trump's, fact check all you want, sweetie. The fact that Kamala Harris is mimicking Donald Trump's um, policies as far as wanting to build more of the wall all of a sudden when she spent all of her time when she was running for president before and while she was vice president, calling it a vanity project, calling it racist, saying that it would never stop anybody. And now all of a sudden she's taking pictures in front of the wall. You know why she's saying that? Because she knows that the wall worked. And that's why now she's trying to gaslight the American people. And so my answer regarding voting for Trump on immigration is twofold. Number one, he was the one who put the policies in place that slowed it down significantly. Okay. And she's trying to mimic those policies, completely, totally lying about her position on illegal immigrations. They were the ones who softened. The Biden administration signed 90 executive orders on day one, softening and reversing the Trump policies that were restraining illegal immigration. And now they want to act like, specifically Kamala wants to act like she had absolutely nothing to do with it. I don't know what they're talking about. I've always been strong on the border. She actually had the audacity to say the other day that she would put her record up against anybody on the border. Well, I am here for that, ma'am. Let's go, because her record's abysmal. They attached her name, Biden, Harris. It used to be before that, every president had their own, like it's the Biden administration, it's the Trump administration. They named it the Biden Harris administration for a reason. So now she is stuck with all of those policies and everything that they absolutely did. Under this administration, the criminal aliens that have been deported is way down, and the criminal activity and the amount of people on a terrorist watch list are way up. And it's highly problematic and dangerous to this country. And for those of you who think that, oh, well, it's only a few people. As I heard a reporter say the other day that it's only a few apartment buildings in Colorado that have been taken over by violent Venezuelan gangs. Really? You want your daughter to live there? You want your family to live there? And one of the only few in the United States? How many violent gangs are we supposed to have in the United States? How many is the government responsible for protecting us from? I believe all of them. I believe their sole job is our safety, every single citizen. And Donald Trump has mastered it.
Ms. Lucia, how do you feel about that?
I agree. Unfortunately, the increase in immigration has left our national security at the utmost worst right now. Unfortunately, interesting enough, I do operate a marketing agency, but I have a master's and a bachelor's in criminal justice, and I focused in homeland security on my bachelor's. My thesis and my master's was about having international, like an international type of software that you could be able to tap into between Interpol and CIA and FBI, because unfortunately we know the CIA and the FBI don't talk to each other. So being able to properly vet people in a quicker time frame would be capable if you were able to actually track everybody down. But unfortunately on day one, like Melanie Collette stated, Biden had 90 different executive orders that eliminated all these immigration issues. He one, for example, automatically wanted to include them on the census. Why was he doing that? Because he wanted to inflate the population in certain districts in order to create congressmen and Congress spots. In order for that to happen, he needed that population. For example, another one, currently what's going on in the state of Virginia, Governor Youngkin had over 20,000 non-citizens removed from the voter rolls. Did you know on this past week that the DOJ just issued a lawsuit against the Youngkin administration because of that? What does that say to you? They have been pushing immigration in this country in order to inflate voter counts, in order to get those votes. Because if they didn't care and they didn't want those votes, or they didn't think that mattered, they wouldn't be issuing a lawsuit against an administration. When in 1996, Bill Clinton, when he was president, Congress enacted a bipartisan piece of legislation that said it was a federal offense to have a non-citizen vote in an election, in a federal election. So we need to think about, why are they allowing the borders to be wide open? There is ulterior motives, and it's because they want to keep a hold and a control, because as long as they give people free stuff, those people are going to continue to gravitate. We should not allow people to come in here and be able to live off of our resources if they're not going to be putting in their fair share. And unfortunately, immigration has gotten quite out of control the past 3.5 years, and we need to do something about it. And I truly believe that Donald Trump is going to put a stop to it, like he did back in 2016 when he took over.
Education. Why vote Donald Trump on education?
School choice. As a former educator, someone who was in education for 24 years, I worked in both private and public schools. And, I think that all of these things also are intertwined. I appreciate that we're going topic by topic, but I think school choice is extremely important. That there are many, many public schools that are failing, where kids are not reading on grade level and they are letting them go through. And I can tell you personally, as a teacher, as a former teacher, that this is happening, that they are continually and perpetually lowering the standards. And I think that all of these things are intertwined when you talk about the economy and immigration and education, because immigration affects the illegal immigration is having a negative impact, not only on the economy, because it's inflationary, it's causing prices of things to go up, but also on education. I can tell you that I've personally had classrooms where I had 4 kids from 4 different areas, Spanish-speaking areas, speaking 4 different dialects of Spanish that I was supposed to teach out of 25 some odd kids. And where is my focus on those kids because they don't understand English? Who is suffering? The kids who speak English, because the teacher is spending most of their time on those kids. It's not fair and it's not right, particularly if they are not here legally. It is just completely wrong.
I take it you might feel the same, Ms. Lucia?
Yes, the education in this country has gotten, unfortunately, since I was in school, it's kind of gotten watered down. My daughter is in the 5th grade. My son is in pre-K. I see it. I've seen how it's kind of collectively gone down. We moved from one locality because was very liberal driven on the school board, and we moved to the next neighboring city. I moved out of Virginia Beach, moved into Chesapeake. Chesapeake is very conservative. I can see quite a big difference between those two, with my daughter going from John B. Dye on Great Neck Road, which is essentially considered the private school in Virginia Beach, but moving from that school district to conservative Chesapeake is a whole complete different ball game. Education is the utmost necessary need for this country. It's what builds our youth. It's what's going to build this country up to continue to prosper. We need to have good education. We need to reinvest in good education, and we need to also allow people to choose. If they don't want to send their kid to one school and they're capable of sending them to another, then why not? We are all taxpayers, whether or not we have children or not. We are still helping fund public schools. So there should not have to be a cookie cutter about you fit into this little section, so then therefore you're going to go here. Why don't we just make it so that they can be able to choose and have the voucher systems? Or if they want to go to a private school, let them go to private schools. Some children need to have more hands-on, more one-on-one attentiveness. If that's the capability that they need, then you know what? Then let them do it. It's similar to being in colleges. Some people like the smaller D3 colleges. Some people like the D1s. Guess what? They can still get scholarships. Our scholarships are just federally funded because they're public schools and the taxpayers are helping out.
And I will say one more thing about why education is important, and I think Lucia touched on it a little bit, is the absolute indoctrination that goes on in public schools. And I thought people were exaggerating, that they were talking crazy when they say that. But it is literally everywhere, and it is in the training of the teachers. Many times I had these yearly trainings and I had to say to myself, think like a liberal in order to answer these questions. What is gender? Why are you asking me that question? What does that have to do with me teaching accounting? Not a thing. Culturally, all of these initiatives that are supposedly supposed to help kids in different various diverse situations that when they can't read. Yeah, that is problematic. We are concerning ourselves with things that are not our concern. Not to mention, if you're a Christian, it's a spiritual cesspool because it is an anything goes and forcing teachers to do things like use a certain pronoun, your student's preferred pronoun in the classroom, and then when you call home, hide that from their parents. These are things that the government is trying to make legal, the federal government. And what they do is they say to the school, if you don't do this and make your teachers do that, then we're not going to give you funding. That is fundamentally wrong. School districts should have local control. And that's why Donald Trump is the best on education.
Let's switch to healthcare. Why vote Donald Trump on healthcare?
I'll tell you, worst thing that ever happened was Obamacare. Hands down. You could keep your doctor. No, you couldn't. You couldn't keep your doctor. They lied straight to his. Obama, he was the most he had so much charisma that he could sell a chocolate popsicle to a person wearing white gloves. So the thing is that healthcare is a necessity. Yes, it is a necessity, but the Affordable Care Act, believe it or not, it wasn't all about healthcare. It was about student loans. Why would student loans be in Healthcare Act? Think about that. There was so much pork buried into that. It was ridiculous. When I worked at Centera at Anthem for a little bit, and I worked with Affordable Care Act. You know, the amount of people that actually are able to get under the Affordable Care Act, you have to be almost in poverty level. How much of this country actually lives at poverty level? Well, probably under Biden and Harris has probably increased substantially. So it's probably better right now. But unfortunately, that's more indicative, again, of a horrible economy. But Affordable Care Act, you have to generally be a family of four making like $12,000 to $14,000 to be covered for it. Or, you know, the only thing I will say, the good thing about the Affordable Care Act was the pre-existing conditions, because I felt that that was ridiculous, that they somebody who had a pre-existing condition, if they had cancer one time in their life, that no insurance would ever cover them. And I thought that that was ridiculous. But when it comes to having healthcare, yes, we should all have healthcare. There have been times in my life that I didn't have healthcare. Thank God nothing ever happened to me. But I always made sure I had a job that offered healthcare, and I got that employer to help pay for it through a premium, and then I paid my fair share. You could work at 20 hours at Starbucks and get healthcare. So explain to me why we have to continue to have the federal government put their hand in that cookie jar and help subsidize the healthcare system of this country when the healthcare system continues to make billions and trillions of money every single year.
Ms. Mellon, before you tap in, I think Mr. Steve Arnold's comment here about childcare could play into this. So if you want to throw your answer into both of them, that's fine.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. I did see what he commented there, and I think he's absolutely right. And this is the kind of the elephant in the room that public education doesn't want to address. And one of my many beefs with public education. Kudos for Steve Arnold for working with his child at home, and that's why his child can read. There are kids in kindergarten who can't even spell their name. It used to be that parents worked with their kids. And that they didn't just rely on the public school system. And unfortunately, we have cultures that don't do that anymore. And in my opinion, it is because certain parts of the government has tried to convince our electorate that the government should have control over their child's education. And that is wrong. In fact, I will tell you as a former teacher that what they teach teachers is that the most important factor in a child's education is the teacher, not the parent. Also completely wrong. Government wants to be your daddy, the federal government, at least from the left's perspective. And I think that that is absolutely 150% wrong. And the results are there for itself. Parents I actually did my master's thesis on the effects of parent involvement on a child's education. And my research actually found that it is significant. But that is not what they train teachers to believe. That's not what they teach in education programs, in colleges, and that's certainly not the training that teachers in public schools receive. Teachers in public schools receive the message that it is all on them. No one is okay. I made it up. You're right. I was in education for 24 years. I made it up.
here's unless you have more to add, my next topic is one that Ms. Lucia and I in person have actually argued about. So gun policy. Why vote Donald Trump?
Okay. I worked at the National Rifle Association as an intern in college. So I'll tell you, Reckless lawsuit preemption. Reckless lawsuit preemption does not allow anybody to be able to go up against a gun manufacturer and have them as a reckless lawsuit against somebody passing away. Because unfortunately, a firearm does not set itself off. It has to have a trigger pulled. And who has to be able to do it? An individual. It's not just going to shut off on, it does not spontaneously combust. I'm sorry. And unfortunately, Mr. Baldwin, you have to put a bullet in there too and pull the trigger for it to happen. So let me explain. 99.98% of firearms in this country are not used in a criminal act. You are more likely to get pregnant than to use a firearm in a criminal act. So think about that. Birth control is more effective than a firearm being used in a criminal act. So think about it. When you have a firearm, which I have in my house, okay? Yes, I have children, but I have it in a safe because my husband was on deployment and he did not feel comfortable with me being at home with my daughter and nobody else being there at the time. So he made sure that I had a firearm. I've shot it many, many times, not a problem. There have been so many instances, especially now with immigration going crazy and you need to be able to take care of yourself, that if somebody's going to come into your home, there are instances where there are localities that are so low funded that 911 will not get back to your house as quickly. So the best thing you can have is be able to protect yourself. And protect yourself, what are you going to do? Go after somebody with a machete? No, you're going to go after somebody. You're going to have a firearm and you're going to be able to point it at that person and you're going to shoot it if they literally are going and inflicting any type of fear and that you think you're going to die. So think about that. Firearms that Harris says, oh, I have a firearm. Oh, really? I'd like to see it. Waltz can't even load a shotgun properly. So don't tell me that you shot a gun, okay? So let me say, when it comes to the Second Amendment, Donald Trump never inhibited anything against us when it came to that. I do not believe in all these local shootings. I was in high school when Columbine happened. I feel for everybody. I had a friend of mine who were at Virginia Tech, who lived in the dormitory that Suyu Chang went after and started shooting in. I understand. I have a friend of mine, Jason Nixon. His wife was killed in the May 31st massacre in Virginia Beach. So I understand. But I'll tell you, if you talk to anybody in the May 31st, they would all say what caused it is the fact that it was a no-gun zone. An individual came into a place with a firearm knowing nobody else had one that was sitting ducks. And if they were able to bring their firearm with them, they would have been able to protect themselves. And the Biden-Harris administration and the Harris-Waltz administration would want to continue to go after us till we couldn't protect ourselves. So all of us would be sitting ducks.
And this is the thing, President Trump has been consistent in his defense of 2A. Whereas Kamala Harris all of a sudden is, purporting herself as this gun-toting DA that's always been down with guns and using guns, when there is video after video after video of her talking about how horrible guns are, how there's going to be a mandatory buyback of guns, how there should be a ban on assault weapons, how all of these things. I'm so glad Ted Lamb is in the house because hopefully he can go back and listen to what I said about education. But but anyway, as far as the guns are concerned, she has been very clear about how she feels about guns. And it's only since she started to run for president again that she's now saying she's not trying to take anybody's guns away. There's a video of her saying that we might necessarily have to go into your house and check and make sure that your gun is stored properly. Excuse me, ma'am? Getting back to threats to democracy, that kind of policy is a threat to democracy. That is not the way 2A works. And understand that not only are guns to protect us from the criminal element and those possibilities, but also to protect us from the government. Because one of the first things that a government does to control its citizenry is take away their guns. And so that is why that is highly problematic. And listen, there's a chasm between saying that you want more things put in place to protect people, more background checks and these kinds of things, than saying we're going to take everybody's guns away. Look at how that is working out in places like Chicago. Any place where there are no guns allowed, now the only people who have the guns are the bad guys. And that is highly problematic, especially as Lucia talked about earlier. When you're a single woman, I've said this before and I'll say it again. I'm a 5'2", £150 woman. If somebody comes in my place uninvited, he can eat some lead, period. And you can't wait. Once I call the police, it's too late by the time he gets there, because whatever nefarious thing that dude has planned for me done already happened. And a gun is the great equalizer where that's concerned, and Donald Trump protects those rights, and it's important.
Abortion rights. Why vote Donald Trump?
I will say I don't believe he doesn't want to completely take away a person's right to be able to have the ability to end a pregnancy if they necessarily needed to under certain circumstances. There are, unfortunately, I think in this country, there's a very lack of commitment when it comes to certain things. I think people are very frivolous about certain things. And I think there are instances where people use it as a form of birth control. And I don't feel that that is morally correct. And I don't feel that that is appropriate. We have instances where there's rape and incest, totally understandable. They shouldn't have, nobody should be subjected to what those individuals have been through. And they surely shouldn't have to endure the pain of going through having to deal with a full term pregnancy under those circumstances. Or if there's an incident where the mother's life is being threatened. My concern more so is, and he did allude to it in his debate against Biden, when he stated about the Virginia governor who stated that we're going to make the baby comfortable until the mother decides what she wants to do. For the government, for the news organization to fact check and say that was never said, I call BS, because I heard it. Governor Northam, which is incredibly sad, was a pediatric neurosurgeon. He worked with CHKD, and he stated that, and I heard the words out of his mouth because I listened to the podcast while it was live. And for anybody to state we're going to keep the baby comfortable until the mother decides after she's already had the child, that is murder. I'm sorry, I don't care what you say, but there are instances where that was happening in the state of Virginia. We had legislation for an abortion bill to the full term of a pregnancy. It was an individual in Northern Virginia, was a state representative from Fairfax and a state representative from Virginia Beach, Miss Kelly Fowler, who backed the bill. And it did not have a term limit on that. They also, I'll tell you, there are women out there who, and for them to say no woman would harm themselves to do that. There was a state case in Norfolk back in the early 2000s where a woman shot herself in her belly to terminate her own pregnancy when she could have gotten an abortion. So don't tell me people don't do crazy stuff. So if we were to, that honestly, I think should have been a conviction, but they stated the argument was that the law is not based off of morals, it's based off of ethics. And you can't argue that that's not ethically because there's no law stating you can't do that. So we need to take into terms what is acceptable as a society and what is not. And then we need to go with that. You have Harris saying that Trump is on a war against women being able to have full control over their bodies. I didn't hear Harris talking about you don't need to take a COVID shot about 3 years ago. So I don't ever want to hear saying your body, your choice when you made us get freaking shots in our arms. Because my body was not my choice then.
Miss Melanie.
That's certainly all the facts. And you and I had a little bit of a back and forth the other day about that on social media, because I posted a meme that said something like calling abortion healthcare is like calling slavery human resources. And my point is, like, let's call it what it is. But I think that Trump, from a policy perspective, is in the right space, which is what the Supreme Court decided, which that it should be a state's issue. If you go to doctors are not performing like abortions or ending a pregnancy when the mother's life is at stake. And that is up to the mother. That is not happening. Even in places where the media has tried to sensationalize those things, that is not happening. And, I think that one of the problems that I have, it was actually a Republican that came for me for posting that. He's like, that's why we lose elections, because you pro-life people keep saying things like that. And what I said to him was, you can have both. You can absolutely believe that unaliving a child in utero is killing a baby, because that is exactly what it is. You can also say what Lucia said, as far as policy is concerned, that while that is true, I'm not willing to legislate a 10-year-old who was impregnated by her uncle having to have that baby. You can have both. You can absolutely have both things. So, but I think, one of my problems with some people on the left, definitely, who talk about it like it's a procedure, like it's not murder, like it's some clinical thing. I defy anybody to go and look it up, watch a video and see what it actually is. Serial killers who get the death penalty get more grace than an aborted baby. That's just a fact and what it is. And I'm not willing to call it something different just to make people feel more comfortable with it, so that you have people like Governor Northam, as Lucia talked about earlier, feeling very comfortable with saying on a radio station that we'll make the baby comfortable and then decide what to do. Sorry, what does that even mean? And bringing it back to this election cycle, Waltz changed something in his abortion law in his state that doesn't protect babies who survive abortions. I think there are many people who are not aware that some babies survive abortions, that there are literally people walking around with scars from surviving an abortion. That actually does happen. And Waltz is for letting those babies die, and that is problematic.
Let me piggyback real quick. Does anybody remember Scott Peterson and Lacey Peterson?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Did you know that he is serving a life sentence for the death of his wife?
Yep.
And unborn son?
Fact.
Leave it at that.
Also, just I believe we, Lucia, you and I touched on this back on the Beach Brothers show when we had Nick Freitas on at the time. So we do go back a little bit on this topic. Next topic, taxes. Why vote Donald Trump?
Because the tax cuts that Donald Trump implemented while he was in office had a phenomenal effect on everybody involved, including the middle class. The middle class, the upper middle class, poor people, everybody got on the come up when he did those tax cuts. And you can see, and those tax cuts are going to expire very shortly. And what economists are saying is that everybody's going to be paying $2,000 more on top of what we're already paying due to the inflationary policies that were implemented by the Biden-Harris administration. So, investment was at an all-time high when taxes were cut. What companies do when taxes are high is they move their businesses out of the country. And then that increases unemployment, and that makes things cost more. It's highly problematic. So I don't know about anybody who's listening, or you, Lucia, I've never received a bonus from a poor person. I've never received a raise from a poor person. I've never received a philanthropic donation of any kind for any organization I work with from a poor person. There are wealthy people who do that, and they need to have the means to do those things.
So in terms of corporate tax cuts and, well, the taxes in general, I'll tell you this. I would rather have somebody advising this country and helping to push us that was a businessman than the bureaucrat and a woman who was employed by the state her entire career. She didn't have to worry about employing people and understanding how to make a positive business. Yes, people will say Donald Trump declared bankruptcy. Okay. How many people have declared bankruptcy in this country? I know we have one that's on city council in Virginia Beach, but I don't hear them complaining. Everybody went after her when somebody brought it up. But no, it's okay to go after Trump. He's a businessman and he knows business, he knows numbers, and quite frankly, he helped turn this country into um, bringing back Ford and bringing back, a multitude of different industries. Because if you reinvest in your country by cutting taxes, that means you're going to have industry that's going to come back. It's going to create more employment. It's going to be by creating jobs. It's going to reinvest because it's going to be cheaper for them to come here. Biden and Harris, and then the Harris Waltz is going to essentially just make China more money. That's what they want to do. Because as we see, Biden was getting kickbacks from China. I mean, it's already showing it's even more and more with everything going with Hunter. Now, explain to me if there's probably a correlation somewhere with Harris Waltz, because Harris doesn't know what she's doing. She doesn't know the economy. She's telling you we are in a better position now than we were 4 years ago, which take COVID out of the situation. People were better off, quite frankly, if you take COVID out of the situation, the anomaly that the entire world experienced. It wasn't just isolated in the United States. Taxes, the problem is you can't keep taxing the rich because you're going to take ambition away from this country. You can't say you need to pay your fair share when you have people who aren't paying anything. You have, you've got to understand that you can't keep building this country on the backs and breaking down people who make more because they've sacrificed more. There are people who literally live off of unemployment and go from unemployment to a job for 10 weeks to unemployment, and then they do what they can to work the system. And you're going to sit there and say those people need to keep getting breaks, but you're going to take away from somebody who's making a ton of money. That's not right. What I think we need to think about is stop taxing first-time homebuyers the first year. Let's think about that. First-time homebuyers should have a nice tax credit that first year, because God knows that we need more first-time homebuyers, because that's the only way that we're going to start to replenish the system. Trump wants to take your car interest, the interest from your car payment. He wants to make that as a write-off. That's awesome. Think about it. It's a depreciating asset. You can write off of your property tax and the interest that you have on your mortgage, but you can't write the interest off of your cars. Harris wants you to tax. She wants to tax your every time your property goes up. She wants to make you pay. But yet,
Unrealized gains.
What happens when 2008 we had the boom where houses were like $500,000? So you're going to have to pay a tax bill on a $500,000 bill, and then it plummets to $350,000. Do you get your money back from the government? No. But she sure as heck is going to tax you on that $350,000. So we need to think about what she is proposing. All she's continuing to propose is more ways to take money from the middle class, which is already crippled, because essentially it's more than the upper lower class is what it's turning into. Because I guarantee you, between Obama and Biden, they've completely destroyed the middle class. We need to see who's going to replenish back into this country and make it easier for everyday Americans. And I'll say one more thing and I'll let it go. Vance made the comment about allowing family members to be able to get a tax credit who take care of the children. My mom takes care of my son. She watches him after pre-K, and she, during the summer, she is the one that watches him. She's retired. I guarantee you, she'd love to have a tax credit for helping out with the grandson. Does it save me some money? Heck yeah, it does, because I don't have to pay $1,500 a month, which is crippling the middle class even more so on childcare. But if we can also make the incentive, because we give incentives to those who take care of their elderly, but we don't give incentives to the ones that are taking care of the younger ones.
What crime? Why vote for Donald Trump on the topic of crime?
I believe that Donald Trump has been very tough on crime. I know that there's a lot of talk about the illegal immigration crime, and I think part of that is because like you're not even supposed to be here in the first place. But that doesn't mean that there isn't crime from American-born citizens. There certainly is. California is a perfect example, and the way things are going out there, those are the kinds of very liberal policies that Kamala Harris supports, whereas Donald Trump is a law and order president. Donald Trump supports making sure that people obey the law, and if they don't obey the law, that they're taken off the streets. And there are statistics that are saying that, oh, crime has gone down. But when you peel back the onion, you find out that a lot of these crimes are not being counted or not even being reported because people know that nobody's going to do anything about it. The law in California that says, I want to say it's Prop 37. I forget what it's called, but I think it's 37, that allow people to shoplift up to $950 without being prosecuted. That was a Kamala Harris supported law. She is not tough on crime by any stretch of the imagination. Bail reform, another thing that she absolutely supports, that has been a detriment to all these neighborhoods, particularly neighborhoods that already had problems with crime. This is highly problematic, and Donald Trump is somebody who wants to make sure that this is taken care of, and that he doesn't want people to be victims of crime. He wants people who, especially people who are repeat offenders, to be locked up. And Kamala is extremely soft on crime. Madam Vice President, I don't want to be disrespectful, is very soft on crime. So I think that voting for Trump when it comes to crime is a no-brainer. And I think that it's bolstered by the fact that he's been supported by things like the National Border organizations, the police organizations have endorsed him because they know that he is going to stand by people who run toward the bullets, who run toward the danger when something goes down. And he backs the blue, and I think it's very important to back the blue. Bad actors, yes, get rid of them. Make an example of them. I'm not saying that there's no bad actors, but there's bad actors everywhere. So we need to stop demonizing and defunding the police, which Trump is absolutely against, and supporting these people who put their lives in danger every single day to protect the innocent. And Kamala Harris is not for that. As much as she wants to say that I was a tough on crime prosecutor, the metrics don't bear that out.
Ms. Lucia, follow up, if you could, on your thoughts on Trump and crime.
I think Trump wants to just make this country better, and we can't have high rates of crime. It's detrimental to the safety of everyday citizens. For example, I will say Trump reinvigorated New York City. Unfortunately, it doesn't say much now because of Mayor Adams, but he did what he could to reinvigorate that city. He invested in it to make it better, to bring it back, because it was awful. He was very big on, let's making sure and cracking down. Unfortunately, the liberal narrative, and Harris is a very, very progressive liberal, is being soft on crime in general. They're very big on alleviating probation measures, letting people out early. There's just a lot of things that causes the safety of everyday American citizens to be subjected to the possibility of being a victim. And quite frankly, I feel that her tenure as state attorney general and a district attorney, she was very soft on things, but she was very hard on others. And she was big about prosecuting people for predominantly African American males on, drug charges than she was on going after people for firearms charges. She let people out that were murderers, and she didn't have a problem with it. So that right there, her background is enough to state that she's not going to, the proof is in the pudding. She's not for it. If she says one thing, it's lip service, because just look at the actions she did for the majority of her life.
I had a few more topics that I sort of want to bring together because it's all foreign policy based type stuff. So a combination of international trade, Ukraine, Europe, Russia, Israel and Palestine, China. Why vote Trump when you think about foreign policy?
Let me see one thing real quick with Reen Segar. She just wrote, so when ex-President Trump is finally convicted of his crimes, are you going to stand on the same platform that he does not have probation? Did you know the state Supreme Court just met and they went and argued against the felony convictions that you guys are all standing on right now, and they literally at the end of the day, the attorneys from New York were begging not to get sanctioned because Deutsche Bank actually went and testified on behalf of Trump and said, we know he inflated Mar-a-Lago. We didn't care. The reason why is because he had 21 loans that he had with their bank previously, and he had paid every single one in full with interest. That's not indicative of a criminal conviction. That's not indicative of a felony conviction. What happened in New York was election interference, and they even stated it when they asked the attorneys. So you're welcome. Thank you for schooling you on that one. But let me say, when it comes to Israel and international relations, I will always stand by Israel because you know why? Did you know that the reason why Israel is a nation is because the one thing that they need to become a nation is to have another country recognize them as a sovereign nation. It was the United States. And Israel, it has always been an ally of ours because of that. And for anybody in this country, I'm going to say right now, if you stand with Hamas, you're against us. You are with a terrorist organization, Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iran. The three things that are detrimental to the national security of this country. And if you think that you are going to stand on your college campus and that you're going to stand with Hamas, you are standing with a country that I will tell you that if you were over there as a woman, they would kill you or they would rape you. If you were transgender, they would kill you just for that. You need to go and do some research on who you're supporting because that is not indicative of, it may be trendy. It may sound good here because you know what? You live in a democratic nation that you're able to do that. But if you were over there, it would be a life sentence of death. Israel has let me explain Gaza to you. My grandfather was writing a book about this, and it was all about the battle over the Gaza Strip, okay, between Palestine and Israel. Okay. They have been doing this for centuries. It's been a century-long battle over this land. And they're going to continue to go back and forth because, unfortunately, in this world, you're never going to have world peace. I know it sounds great and all, and you see it on Miss America that they want world peace, but it's never going to happen because you're always going to have two people who have differing opinions and want the same thing, and they're going to fight, and that's just going to be the case. But I'm going to tell you, Hamas was wrong in this because they killed babies. They were decapitating them. They were killing Americans. They were killing everybody you could think of. There was a 7-year-old woman, a woman who had a 7-year-old child, and she just had to finally bury her child because she just finally found out that her son was killed by Hamas. So what's going on over there? We need to stand by, and we need to stop playing this neutral party because we need to pick sides. We can't say, oh, we're going to help with Iran because I'm sorry, but Iran is our enemy. They would kill us in an instant. They would send over a nuclear weapon if they could. They probably already have built one because, you know, God knows Obama sent them hundreds of millions of dollars in the middle of the night. But I will say anybody who is not with Israel, who Kamala Harris has tried to find that fine line because she doesn't want to lose any voters. Her he's Jewish, but she doesn't want to go up against the pack. You can't play both sides. Sorry, you can't play both sides of the field. Trump made a pact with Israel, and he did a lot of peaceful things, and they had treaties, and they stood by them. Iran did not do anything. You know why? You know why Iran didn't do a darn thing when Trump was president? Because they had a meeting, and literally they said, okay, Trump goes, okay, hold on. He brings up something, and he slides it over to the president at the head of Iran, and it was a video of his house, of his family, and he said, we've got eyes on you at all times. Go against me, I'll have you put out. That is indicative of a strong leader. That is what we need. That is what this world needs. And that is what this country needs. It's not going to be a Harris who's going to be like, oh, okay, and changing her voice, you know, ethnic backgrounds or whatever accent she wants to put on today or tomorrow, because good luck when you go to Israel. She doesn't have a leg to stand on. So if we want to move forward as a country, Trump is the route to go.
When it comes to foreign policy, especially where Trump is concerned, one thing that I appreciate about President Trump overall is that he does what he says he's going to do. And that's why, to Lucia's point, when he said that to that leader, that, listen, touch one hair on any American's head and you're done. I will absolutely kill you, period. So I seem to recall when Kamala and Biden and that administration was asked about Russia going into Ukraine, and they were like, don't. Oh, I just say one thing, don't. And then like 3 days later, they did. And there were no repercussions for that. I promise you that had that conversation been with the President Trump, he would have said exactly what was going to happen. And then if they went into Ukraine, that's exactly what would have happened. One thing about President Trump is that you can trust that man's word. I remember when he was in office for like the first 6 months, and people were shocked and amazed because he kept doing everything he said he was going to do. So when it comes to foreign policy, and you want somebody who is intimidated, the world has demonstrated, world leaders have demonstrated that they are not afraid of Kamala Harris or Joe Biden. I would argue that they weren't afraid of Joe Biden, and they're even less afraid of Kamala Harris. Do you really think when she goes into a meeting with Xi or Kim Jong-un that anybody is going to be intimidated by anything that she says? If she meets with representatives that are terrorists, they're going to listen to Kamala Harris. They're afraid of her. A woman on top of that. On what level and where has she demonstrated any kind of strength in foreign policy? Zero. She's got no record that says she can be trusted, and God forbid, as commander in chief. You know, she sat there and said, after 13 people died in Afghanistan, after that ridiculous, horrible withdrawal in Afghanistan, she sat there and said on The View that she wouldn't change one thing. It shows me that she's not a very thoughtful person when it comes to foreign policy. If anything, she could have said that she regrets that those 13 soldiers lost their lives. That's not somebody we want as a commander in chief. And I'm not in the military, but I would think, as somebody in the military, you want a commander in chief for whom each and every life of someone in the military is important. No, I'm not saying a woman can't demonstrate it. I'm saying that those entities don't have respect for women in general, so they darn sure aren't going to have respect for Kamala Harris's weak behind. That's what I'm saying, to be clear. Not any woman, but especially not her.
They're not going to have respect for somebody who can't even say a coherent sentence.
Next topic. How about climate change? Why vote Donald Trump for climate change?
For me, it's because he's not an extremist. I think that he believes in having a rather diverse policy and not the extreme agenda that we've seen Kamala Harris demonstrate. She was the tie-breaking vote on the IRA. I forget what it stands for now, the Inflation Reduction Act, which was really the Green New Deal. If you look at all of the policies within the within the IRA, it was really about climate change. And I think that he presents a reasonable position on climate change, diversify how we get energy, but making sure that we bring back fossil fuels, which, by the way, that energy policy is very much tied to our economic policies. And part of the reason why prices are so high right now is, and understand this about the green energy and about the cost of gas and fossil fuels, that the way they are priced out is done in a projection, and that's the way most commodities are priced out. And so they go by things like how many licenses are available. He is not against fracking. He's pro fracking. That's his stance on fracking. Unlike Kamala, who's now lying about her position on fracking, Trump has been consistent. And that's another thing. He has not changed his stances on these things. So he is for fracking, but I also do believe that he is for a more diverse approach, and not one that is so insane as to say, oh, by 2035 we're going to have 100% EVs when we don't even have the infrastructure for it. It makes no sense whatsoever. And so I think that he is thoughtful and reasonable when it comes to his environmental policy, whereas Kamala Harris has demonstrated herself to be an extremist, and it's highly problematic.
Is Lucia?
Okay, so Miss Nicholson first, I'm going to say draft dodger. He was not a draft dodger. He actually signed up for the draft. He went to business school. Then he came out. He obviously didn't have to go in because of being in business school, and then came to find out that he actually had a medical condition that wouldn't allow him to go into the draft, similar to what Biden stated. So there you go. And I like how you're consisting with windmills causing cancers. I tell you that windmills actually are against the environment because they kill more birds than anything, just like the windmills out in the ocean. If you haven't noticed the amount of whales that have been drumming up on the courses of the beaches up and down the East Coast as of recently, it's because it's messing with their sonar. So to the lengths of what are we trying to do? What are we willing to give up to get? So we need to take in consideration, those windmills, they're not very good. I mean, the turbines alone, when you have to try to rebuild them and everything, it's going to be more detrimental to the into the earth and all of that. The climate change, you have electric vehicles, this whole initiative of electric vehicles, Tim, to cut down on the pollution. Well, what did Ford recently come out and said? That EVs are not the future. We can't do that anymore because it's not sustainable. Because one, the batteries, they're spontaneously combusting. You have a natural disaster, and that was the biggest problem they were having in Florida. People were concerned about having to store their Teslas because you have salt water that interacts with it, and they cause fires. They're safety issues. My issue right now is that the United States is trying to pose all these limitations. I mean, Obama at one point, and I'm sure Harris will probably do it, wanted to put a sensor on your chimney and tax you on the emissions that came out of your fire chimney, like a firewood chimney or your gas chimney. What was it? Biden was trying to go after people's gas stovetops. I mean, come on. What are the lengths that we're going to go? The United States has done so many regulations to cut down the emissions that we have that it has actually really considerably dropped. What we can do as a nation is stop being so reliant on China, which is the number one contributor to pollution in this world. They cause 27% of the pollution that is in this world is coming from China, and China has zero regulation. So if we really want to go there, oil spills cause damage to the environment as well. Okay, well, when's the last time you heard about an oil spill? Back when Katrina happened in 2006? Okay, there's your nice point made. But let me say, China, what was that, Conrad?
Deepwater Horizon.
Okay, so 2006, I remember the oil spill they had there. But let me say, China is the biggest contributor. It's not all us. So until we start regulating every nation in this world, we're not going to be able to do anything about climate change.
Yep, China and India, and as somebody who lives on a peninsula in New Jersey, so I have the bay on one side and I have the Atlantic Ocean on the other side of me because I live way down in the bottom of New Jersey. I know that President Trump is against the wind turbines, and there are many studies. I've done I happen to be an elected official where I live, so I've learned a lot about the wind turbines over the past couple of years, that they tried to do it by executive order, which is another fundamental problem in and of itself. Speaking of democracy, you don't have the representatives vote on it. You just decide by executive order that you're just going to go ahead and put these wind turbines out off of our coast. And they still don't know. There are no studies, I looked, that says how it's going to affect things like our fishing industry. The company that was going to put them off of our coast, off of the Atlantic coast in my county, said, its name is Orsted, said that our tourism would go down 15%. That's by their own admission. I don't believe them at all. And the things that they have to do to damage the environment to put these wind turbines in is completely ridiculous. The things that they have to disturb, the places that they have to dig, how the noises are messing up the animals communicating with each other like they normally could because of the sonar issues, and they are allowing, these people have been bought off, some of these environmentalists, that's why they're not saying anything, to allow a certain amount of deaths to the wildlife. And after all of this, after going through all of this, then what you gain as far as reducing climate change is negligible. It does nothing. The studies show that the wind turbines don't actually do much to offset climate change. It just doesn't. And meanwhile, like everyone's electric bills are going to go up like 30 to 40%. And they just feel like, and that's fine if you can absorb that. But I would submit to you that most people cannot absorb that kind of increase in their electric bill. So, the things like that are highly problematic. They're very extreme. And it was the Biden administration that gave the state of New Jersey the money to bolster that kind of policy, to try to make that happen. Billions of dollars given to these foreign companies in order for them to do that. It's also a security issue for the country. So because Trump has some sense when it comes to climate change and these kinds of policies, is why I would support him where that's concerned.
And now for the last one, the Gallup list of topics for 2024 came up is LGBTQ rights. Why vote Donald Trump?
You can go ahead.
I don't think that, I don't find his policies to be problematic, but I'm not a part of that community. As far as he has not done any of the things that extremists in the LGBTQ community have said he was going to do. He's going to put an end to gay marriage. He's going to, the biggest issue that I think is going on in that area is letting, guys play in girls' sports. And he does not want to see that happen. And he wants to put an end to that. And I think that's reasonable. It's a safety issue and it's a fairness issue. And I think that we really need to work on what we refer to as a right. When I spoke about this earlier, about our rights and about democracy, other people's rights end where mine begins. You don't get to choose that. So, when you have boys and girls bathrooms, that's highly problematic because the boy feels like he's a girl. That's a problem. There's a reason why they were separated. And I can tell you, I was a little girl once. Seeing a penis before you are mature enough to see one is highly problematic and highly traumatic. Probably why girls and boys' rooms are separated. And there's other really bad things that can happen. Is it that community that's doing it? No, I'm not suggesting that that's what's going on. And I don't want anybody to go around saying, and you're saying that community is a bunch of perverts. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying that people use that. They use that as an excuse. And that's why they should be separated. Kamala Harris put in place in California so that, sex changes could be done among inmates. Why? Using taxpayer dollars. Why? And Donald Trump is against that. And I think that's the right move. But generally speaking, I think that there are log cabin Republicans for Donald Trump. There's LGBTQ organizations for Donald Trump. Because here's the thing, in my opinion, people who are not extremists in any of these areas, I know plenty of gay Trump supporters, believe it or not. You're going to find that shocking because they're reasonable people. They're not extremists. And they don't agree with any of this foolishness that's going on the extreme left, with allowing boys and girls bathrooms and these kinds of crazy, ridiculous things that are going on that he's against. So I think that he wants to protect women from these kinds, from men in women's sports. You don't see it going the other way around a lot, probably because women would get hurt. Biological women would absolutely get hurt. So there are organizations that support it. I have friends on my Facebook page that are gay that are big Trump supporters. Quite a few, as a matter of fact. but they're just not for these extreme agendas. They're not for forcing people to use pronouns by law. That's an interruption to democracy. It's a violation of the First Amendment. But these are the types of things that they're forcing teachers to do. Fortunately, some teachers have been taking their school districts to court and winning, because you can't compel speech like that. So I think that it's something that needs to be discussed as far as what the rights are. I think when you say that because someone is a part of a certain community, they have the right to tell you how to talk about that community is wrong. I think we have free speech for a reason. If you find somebody that's using terrible words toward that community, there should be punishment for that. And there will be repercussions for that, societal repercussions, as there should be. I don't believe in discrimination of any sort, and nor does Donald Trump. But I do believe that Donald Trump believes that people have the right to have their opinion and say what they want about those. And it should not be done in a legalistic way, where now you're saying, oh, you can't say that. You can't say that about that group. You can't say that that person has mental problems. You can't say that. Well, you can. You can absolutely believe that. That's part of what the United States is, that we can say what we believe about a certain thing without being called a bigot and without being punished by law for believing that.
Ms. Lucia.
So LGBTQ, I'll tell you, my aunt's a lesbian and she supports Trump. She's been supporting Trump. She started supporting him in 2016, believe it or not. I think the thing is it comes down to the basis of not ramming stuff down people's throats. Everybody can be different in this country. I think the problem is that you have a side who is incredibly fascinated and driven to be accepted by everybody, regardless if that person wants to accept you or not. And unfortunately, we've come to a terms where if you don't accept them, then you're automatically a name. And I don't feel that that's appropriate. Some people just don't like people. Some people just don't like certain people. That is their own prerogative. Is it my prerogative? No. I like people of all walks of life, all different shapes, colors, backgrounds, sexual orientations. I don't care. So the thing is that when it comes to the LGBTQ, I think the big thing is that, like Melanie had pointed out, Trump is very for freedom of anything. If he's not going to be, he's not on a war with the gay people. He doesn't want to outlaw marriage. I always joke around. I'm like, shoot, why should we only allow heterosexuals be miserable in marriage if that's that's limiting people. Some people are miserable when they're married. Some people are elated. I have a very good marriage and I'm happy. Some people not so much. We shouldn't limit that to just one sexuality. If everybody wants to have the opportunity to be miserable, if that's what they want, everybody should have the opportunity to be joyous too. My argument is when it comes to the imposition of beliefs and mentalities, and for example, right now, the war on females when it comes to sports, that hits me because my daughter plays softball. She's a travel ball player. It will eventually go to her when she gets to college. I don't feel that if you are born a male and you want to play and you identify as a female later on, that you should be able to compete against other females, because that is technically the same way of you taking steroids. Men have a DNA composite in their DNA that you can never strip. I don't care what you do. It's in your bones. That's why archaeologists are capable of determining when they look at a set of bones if it was a female or a male, regardless of how old it was. It's because it's in the genetic makeup of the body and in the bone structure. Genetically, men are stronger than women. I don't agree with a male identifying as a female competing in wrestling against other females. It gives him a genetic advantage or gives that person a genetic advantage that a female would have had they taken steroids. If we don't allow steroids, and I'm not saying we should allow steroids, we shouldn't allow this. We shouldn't allow, if you don't identify. Now, if you want to have a third range of transgender athletes compete against transgender athletes, because then considerably they would be a Y and X composite, then let's do that. But I don't think that we should have boys that identify as girls and girls identify as boys going up against different genders. I just don't see that. China would wrestle against men in the WWE. Well, China, she was also on steroids, so go figure. But when it comes to LGBTQ, he does not want to outlaw marriage. I told my aunt this back in the early 2000s that the next Civil Rights Act was going to be on the gay community, and I foresaw it coming. But the thing that she'll tell you now is that she doesn't agree with the younger community trying to ram everything down their throats when they didn't fight for what they got. My aunt was a lesbian in the 80s, where it was, you had to be a closet. It was not acceptable. You were outed. Just like gay guys were outed, it was not acceptable. And the amount that they had to go through to fight to get where it is today, and having people who are just, you need to accept me, and they didn't fight to get that acceptance, is necessarily, I think it's counterintuitive. So be happy with the freedoms that you've gotten from what the people have given to you, and don't try to require people to accept you regardless if they feel that they agree with you or not, because I guarantee you people don't agree with me because I'm a Republican and I think conservatively. I know there's a lot of people who don't think that. They don't like that. They don't agree with that. Well, you know what? That's your right.
Well, that's it in terms of my topics. Would anyone like to give some parting thoughts as to why vote Donald Trump? And again, thank you guys for joining me tonight and just sharing your thoughts.
I will say this, that Donald Trump could go on with the rest of his life. He didn't have to run for politics. In 2015, he decided he wanted to run for politics because he felt that there was something wrong with this country. Yes, he was a Democrat before he was a Republican. And believe it or not, he never was, nobody convicted him of anything. Nobody took him to court for anything before he decided to run. I think he truly believes that he can do better for this country. And I think what I feel, why I support him, is he's a breath of fresh air. He tells you what he's going to do and he does it. He did that in 2016. He is not a traditional politician. He's not going to tell you that the world is made of puppies and rainbows and then turn around and do the opposite. He's going to tell you straightforward. And I think people have a problem with people shooting him straight and being realistic about things. And that's what I appreciate, because the transparency that he provides is a lot more, it's a lot more refreshing than being put in the dark and then telling everybody it's all good, because you know it's not all good. Like how they're trying to say, oh, the economy's great. No, it's not. It's awful. A lot of people are suffering. Trump could say screw it after 2020 and they went after him and say, you know what, I'm done. I'm not doing this. But he really wants to set this country off and into a better foot, because everything he said was going to happen with Biden happened. And Harris already again said she wouldn't do anything different. So we've got to save this country. And honestly, I don't believe that Harris is capable of doing it. Waltz, he giggles all the time, and so does she. And unfortunately, that's indicative of people who are insecure and don't know what they're talking about. Trump tells you exactly how he's going to do things because he's a businessman and he knows what he's doing. So if you don't agree with that, I think that Trump is a better choice, then that's your choice. You don't have to vote for him. But quite frankly, if we want to have a opportunity to take this country back and to be able to progressively move forward and make this country better than it already is, he's the route to go.
Miss Melanie?
Yep, I completely agree with you. And I would say to people, especially people who are on the fence, so to speak, to really look at all the things that they said was going to happen when President Trump went into office. when he won in 2016. They said black folks were going to go back to Africa. They said that he was going to end gay marriage. He never even tried to do either of those things. The left is constantly accusing him of being Hitler. Hitler killed 6 million Jews. He's done nothing of the sort, not even anything close to that. Ask yourself what your pocketbook looked like, what the world looked like as far as how things were going abroad. How many wars were we in when he was president? How was the economy when he was president? We've already had a taste of what it would be like to have Donald Trump as president, and we've had a taste of what it's like to have Biden-Harris as president, and Harris said she was not going to change one single thing. That in and of itself should be startling to anyone, even if you support her, because nobody gets it perfectly. I've heard Donald Trump say that there are some treaties that he would like to renegotiate that he negotiated during his presidency because he thinks there's some things that need to change. That's somebody who's thoughtful about their policy, willing to make thoughtful changes. When he changes his opinion on something, he tells you why. We have not heard from Kamala Harris on one policy change as to her why. It's like she's had this come to Jesus, been a born again Christian, if you will. I don't know one person who became a Christian and doesn't have a why. She has all these policy flips that she's supposedly changed, and she's got no why and refuses to do the American public the dignity of giving us an explanation so that we can trust her. With Donald Trump, you know what you're getting. You're getting safety. You're getting the police funded. You're getting a closed border. You're getting a better economy. So I think that's what people really should focus on and think about and be thoughtful when they go to the polls on November 5th.
Well, thank you guys for sharing your thoughts on that matter. How about before you go, each of you give me just things to follow you on, or viewers could tune into you and see about your services.
Sure. For me, you can hop onto my page at How Money Works. My Facebook page is How Money Works with Melanie Collette. I think I might have a couple of spots left if you want to friend me on Facebook. It's just simply Melanie Collette. And you can follow me on X at NJGOP Diva. At NJGOP Diva. Be happy to have you.
And Miss Lucia.
Oh, I don't really have I had my website, which is owenmarketinggroup.org. Other than that, I just have my normal Facebook stuff that you probably see 20 million posts about my daughter's softball. I try to cut back a little bit on the political side when I got a little bit out of the political scene with running at the time, and focusing and reinvesting in my family. So, but other than that, I have still, I believe, the Lucia Owen for City Council. I still have that page up, but I haven't really updated it much. But you can always reach me out to me on Facebook, Lucia Owen. You can go on LinkedIn. Same thing with my Instagram. It's Lucia M. Owen.
Well, I want to thank you personally, Miss Lucia and Miss Melanie, for coming on tonight. Miss you, Jimmy. Next time, let's see if you still want to come on and have that next debate. I hope you guys have a great night. I'll catch you around.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
Have a good one.
All right. Now for my stance on Donald Trump. The word loathsome is how I take Donald Trump. Disgust, hatred. I feel for Trump in similar ways how I feel about Diddy. I feel for Trump in similar ways how I feel about scammers like Elizabeth Holmes, or those Lehman Brothers executives from 2008, or Charles Ponzi. I feel for Trump in similar ways to George Bush. I feel for Trump the way I feel for the likes of Father Coughlin of the 1930s, or George Wallace of the 60s and 70s. I know of his policies. I know of his character. I know of his history. I have the stance that Trump is a combination of all of those names that I mentioned above. And the sooner he is rid of the American political landscape, the better. I can in good conscience personally suggest for you to vote for him. And do with that what you will. I hope you enjoyed tonight. Remember, the Why Vote Kamala Harris show is on Wednesday night. I hope you all tune into that. And you guys have a great night. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. You guys have a great night.